ATS World Congress is on my mind because it's coming up in Dubai. When I was first at the World Congress, I had my first ride in an autonomous vehicle. And I found this piece of footage, which I shared with you before. So you've had a little bit of a sneak preview of something very old. So I thought we'd just have a quick look at it and just sort of see what we can say about what's happening there and how it relates to what's changed and what hasn't in the world of autonomous vehicles. So I'm going to play this. Maybe
technology giving us a real-time view 360 degrees around the vehicle. We've initiated the location software right now. As we get a readout, it's projected on this screen. You also have a redundant copy of it in the seat back in front of you.
That guy's voiceover is it's really interesting, isn't it? Because as you say, he wasn't a techie; he was just there for his voice, wasn't he? And that's quite an interesting element to the whole piece. But
yeah, it is.
Without.
It was all about the show. Yeah, I did find out afterwards he was a voiceover artist there to make everything sound really cool. But whether, is it all about show or there's some real tech going on here as well. Let's okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Is this one from 10 years ago radically different from what the likes of Waymo are doing now?
But that's the biggest change, is that Waymo are now offering commercial rides without a safety driver at the controls.
So they've taken away the safety driver. So that's
correct.
The big change. Yeah.
Correct.
Is there any oversight at all? Is there a remote oversight on those vehicles?
I mean, it's not fully clear, but I'm sure there is the ability for a remote operation center to dial in and help manage that vehicle should the need arise. But in most circumstances, that need doesn't arise, and the vehicle completes journeys fully. In a fully automated mode.
Yeah, it's a quite a rubbish video, isn't it? It's quite wobbly.
So he'll initiate the route planner. We're all green, so he can initiate full automated driving by keying a switch on the steering wheel. He gets an audio cue and a visual cue. There's a green light bar underneath the instrument cluster. We're now in fully automated highway driving. The vehicle is accelerating up to merging speed and will maintain our preferred lane of travel. As any traffic comes into our pattern, it's illustrated on the screen. And the front radar will keep us at the safe following distance to the vehicle in front of us.
But in this system, and at the time, the safety driver needed to be ready at all times to take over should the need arise, because of uncertainty about whether the vehicle would be capable of dealing with all of the situations that it might encounter. And indeed, sure enough, later in the video, we do encounter one of those situations as a truck pulls across into the driving lane. The safety driver has to take over and manage that situation.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with how it kind of merges with the flowing traffic, though. I mean, it seemed to be doing an awful lot.
It's chosen this center lane so that we can reduce the incursion from vehicles coming into the right.
I think that's quite interesting. It's something that people will tend to do in an automated vehicle is anthropomorphize it. It has chosen this.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't actually an explicit choice by the vehicle, you tend to impose, it must be doing this because of that. Whereas that might not be the true reason why it has chosen to behave in that particular way. And that's something I think is really important for the future of automated driving, is having that transparency over why it's chosen to do the things it has done, so that we can understand when incidents occur what the causes were of those incidents.
So you're just assuming it's doing something that a human might be doing, and it might be doing that for a completely different reason.
Exactly. We're great at that as humans, of sort of trying to put two and two together and come up with a story, but the true story behind that, in terms of the data, may be a completely different scenario.
And it might be coming up with the wrong answer as well. Just before we started recording, you were telling me about how ChatGPT came up. Well, we all know ChatGPT comes up with wrong answers, but you had a very good specific example, which I didn't. Can you repeat that?
So there's an example that's been going around about spelling. So you ask ChatGPT how many R's there are in strawberry, and it will confidently tell you there are 2. And it will spell the word out and show you that, yes, there are 2 R's in strawberry, when of course there are 3 R's in that word. So it's very interesting. We're more and more entrusting safety critical aspects of the transport system to artificial intelligence. We need to have that confidence that it's going to do the right things in the right way to protect life and reduce risk on the roads and in other arenas. If the system that currently is so well known can't spell a fairly simple English word right, you have to question how good it might be in other situations.
Yeah. So some autonomous vehicles, I mean, this one was it had the classics like LiDAR on the roof. I remember it had quite a lot of LiDAR, it had quite a lot of radar, and I have no idea what level of AI would have been involved in a system like this. Do you have an idea of what that might have been possible or used 10 years ago?
I think at this time it would have been much more kind of rule following system. So, using specific programmed rules to respond to scenarios that it encounters. So you're depending on the programmers having thought about all of the situations that it might encounter, and then making sure that the vehicle has a set of responses that can cope with those situations.
But now we're getting the AI in it. We've got different systems, diverging systems now as well, because I did speak to a company the other day, and I think Tesla does this as well, relying wholly now on video-based systems, no LiDAR at all. And they were obviously, being producers of this system, quite confident that that's the way to go. A system, we talked a lot in the past about how autonomous vehicles shouldn't be autonomous. They should be connected to all the other systems, and not drive just on their own. But he was going the other way and saying that actually no, an autonomous vehicle should be able to drive itself just like a human without having to rely on any sort of external maps or external connections. It should be standalone and autonomous, and video was the way to do that, working like our eyes do. Well, what's your take on that sort of argument?
I mean, I can understand the argument that humans drive well using only vision, so maybe vehicles could too. But at the same time, we're not in a perfect state of automation yet. Let's use all of the tools at our disposal to be able to understand the environment and take decisions about how the vehicle should behave. And I fully agree with the point that the vehicle should be able to handle any situation without connectivity, but that connectivity should be used to improve the performance of the system, to help it understand its environment so that it will always deliver the best outcomes. You may have a degraded level of performance in the absence of that connectivity, but it should still be able to manage the situation safely.
That's a good point. What's your take on this then? This from 10 years ago. This was my first autonomous vehicle ride. The video is obviously a bit shaky, but there's a lot of driving, as you can see, without his hands on the wheel. I think we've not got to the point where he has to take over yet, but a lot of highway driving, which I suppose is perhaps slightly easier than the sort of city driving. I think at the time, there were all the confident predictions that autonomous vehicles would be, a commonplace within 4 or 5 years time, and now here we are 10 years later. Are you impressed, satisfied, disappointed with the progress that we've made since 2014?
I think it's really interesting to see this video because it kind of highlights how if you went for a demonstration drive with many automated vehicle providers today, it would be very similar. You know, that it would be highway driving with the occasional intervention by the safety driver to manage situations that the system wasn't capable of dealing with. So that progress hasn't been as rapid as was expected, with the exception of the big guns, you know, the Waymos and the Cruises, who actually are deploying into providing commercial rides for passengers in fully automated vehicles. So there's a weird kind of divergence there of the leaders who are actually deploying this commercially and the fast followers who are trying to get there as quickly as possible. I think the other aspect in the video that's really interesting is how some of the challenges ascribed to the automation of vehicles are the behavior of other human drivers, and those haven't changed. So one of the issues they talk about in the video is compliance with speed limits. How
We're traveling at posted speeds, as you can see. Most of the drivers around us are not.
it's how the automated vehicle will always comply with the speed limits, whereas the surrounding traffic won't do that. So there's a question there. What's the safest thing to do? Is it to keep up with the flow of traffic and go at the speed of the other vehicles, or is it to comply with the speed limit, but you then present perhaps something of an obstacle to other vehicles? Now, you know, my own perspective is that you have to comply with the law so that it's doing the right things, but it's definitely a challenge today is how you manage that difference in speed between a compliant vehicle and other traffic.
We've got the shuttle buses that are autonomous vehicles that you know, have been working quite well for quite a while and are deployed and you know, low speed. You were involved with one of those in Greenwich, weren't you?
Yes, we did some trials of a low speed shuttle, but they are very low speed. And the question then is, you know, really what advantage is there over walking and cycling? And of course, it's definitely helpful for some who have limited mobility, but we have to get these vehicles offering more value to more people more of the time. And that's the challenge of them being able to interact more successfully in more complex environments, which is what Waymo has achieved. I think in the video, it talks about how highways are likely to be the first deployment environments, but you know, these commercial rides are being offered in the highly complex urban environments, San Francisco and LA and Phoenix to a lesser extent in terms of complexity. But yeah, it's their focus has been on matching the use case to the business case rather than the use case to the simpler automation environment.
They're doing well, as you say, aren't they? Waymo and Cruise are doing well. But yeah, quite a few setbacks, and you know, every setback is sort of like, well, they're rolling with the punches, aren't they? I suppose they are coming back. They are sort of forging forward. So, is your feeling that we are going to get there, or that it's going to be abandoned? I think Uber, I think, abandoned their autonomous. Someone was killed, weren't they? A few years ago now in
Elaine Herzberg, 2018.
The Uber crash, something like that, and that completely derailed their program. I mean, I suppose it could take something like that. It's difficult. It's a difficult one, isn't it, to say whether we're going to finally get there? But that does feel a lot closer now with those, particularly with those two giants, as you say.
Yeah, I mean the value of taking humans out from the driving task is unquestionably there, but can you do it in a way that's practical and that is persuasive for the public? And I think that requires a degree of transparency and maybe a bit more kind of humility from the developers themselves, just to make sure it's something that's being done with, not done to the public. And I think if we can get there, we'll be in a much stronger place.
Yeah, it's about not forgetting about the human factors.
Absolutely. Big plug for the column every quarter in TTI magazine.
That's right. And for work you do, you know, in the UK and around the world, Nick.
Absolutely.